Good morning. It's good to see all of you here today. It's good to be together. If you're a visitor, we are especially grateful for your presence, and we hope that you will stick around and let us greet you and get to know you, and we hope that you'll join us again whenever you have an opportunity. We had it's still going on, a family retreat this weekend. Several of us were down at Camp Nayati yesterday, almost 50 of us, and there's still a group down there coming back this afternoon. And as we look ahead, especially in the month of May, many activities to come. I would just point you to the bulletin and encourage you to take a look at all the events that are coming up and plan to get involved with us here at Winchester and join us for Bible classes when we are finished with our worship hour, and pray with us tonight on Facebook at 5, and join us for Wednesday night Bible classes at 7. Many opportunities here to enjoy fellowship with each other and also to grow in our faith. We're going to continue today in our sermon. Took a little break last week. We're going to continue with Best Sermon Ever. This series, going to take it through the first couple Sundays in May, and then we'll move on to something different. But this is a sermon series about the greatest sermon ever, which was the sermon of Jesus that we call the Sermon on the Mount, recorded for us in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. And I want to ask you a question as we get started this morning, and that question is, what do you treasure most? What do you treasure most? What are some of your material treasures? I brought just a few of mine. Can I show them to you this morning as we get started? Just a few of my little treasures. Here's a treasure of mine. It is my Yeti coffee cup. I love this mug. I use it every day. It keeps my coffee warm for a very long time. Not that that's needed, because I drink it so very fast in the morning, and then I want a second mug full. But it's nice to know that if I were to need it, to keep it hot, then it would. I love this Yeti coffee mug right here. This is a treasure to me. We'll call this segment of the sermon Joseph's favorite things, okay? And I'll set them over here. Something else, one of my favorite things, I'll show it to you. My AirPods. Oh, I love these little things. I didn't know how much I needed them before I got them, and my sweet wife gave them to me a couple summers ago, and I can put them in my ears, and they'll link up with my phone, and I can listen to music, or I can listen to a podcast while I'm doing something else. And some of you have seen these in my ears when we've recorded videos for church, to post on Facebook. And my wife even bought me this snazzy little leather cover to go on my AirPods. Boy, I love these AirPods. I use them every day, about like my coffee cup here. And if you look under your pew right now, you will find your I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. I just got caught up in the moment. I'm sorry. That wasn't true. Here's something else I love. My leather bag that I keep all my books in. Something else I use every day. This is one of my favorite things. This is a treasure to me. I had a bag before that I used to carry my books back and forth to the office and, traveling, but it was the bag that Lauren used for her books in college. And so it was kind of old. I'm not saying she's old or that we're old. We're still quite young, just so you know, despite the receding hairline. We're very young, but it was her bag in college, and it was kind of girly. And then, lo and behold, she's a good gift giver. She got me this manly leather bag, and it smells like leather, and I love it, and I keep all my stuff in it. These are just a few of my favorite things. And if you wanted to see more of my favorite things, I could take you to my house and show you all my books there. My books in my office. Don't mess with my books, okay? Don't spill anything on my books. Don't write in my books. They are my treasures, some of my favorite things. And if I were to ask you about some of your favorite things, you would take me to some of you would take me to your garage, and you'd show me your car, and you'd show me your truck, or you'd take me out to the lake, and you'd show me your boat. Or to a storage facility, and you'd show me your camper. And truth be told, I could show you my house. We love our home. It's a wonderful house for our family. It's a treasure to us. What do you treasure most in this life? I've listed some things that I treasure, and I could go on and on with various favorite things of mine. But then I come across Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 6, verse 19, these first words that we heard read just a moment ago, and they catch my attention. Jesus says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth." Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth. So, I can like my things, and I can use my things, but I shouldn't become obsessed with my things. And generally speaking, I shouldn't become obsessed with things, with stuff, with material possessions. Anyway, I shouldn't love my things. It was Paul in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10, who said, the love, inspired by the Holy Spirit, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. So I shouldn't love my things, and I shouldn't make them my treasure. And I shouldn't imbue them with ultimate importance. I think Jesus' words here in this passage are even more challenging now than they were then, than they were when he first spoke them to that crowd gathered around that dusty hill in Galilee as he shared these words that we read in the Sermon on the Mount to this first century audience. Why? Because we are much more materially prosperous than the people to whom he spoke in Matthew chapters 5, 6, and 7. We have so many more things and the opportunity to amass more things than they could even dream about. We could share many examples of this, but one that I've noticed in the last few years is all of these storage buildings that are popping up all over the place. And some of you own some of those, and I'm not knocking you, and good for you for managing those, but why do we need in our country so many storage buildings? Well, the answer is simple. We have so much stuff, and we can't stand the thought of parting with it. And so when we run out of room in our homes, we send it out to a storage facility. That's what some of us do. We are so materially wealthy in our country. And so when we see Jesus' words here, they are more challenging to us than I think they were to the original audience. And then Jesus tells me why I shouldn't store up for myself treasures, big and small, on the earth. Why, he says? Well, that's where moth and rust will destroy, where thieves can break in and steal. That's continued in verse 19. So why? The reason is, Jesus says right here in our passage, these treasures are perishable. They can be lost. Stuff can be destroyed. Lauren and I have 3 different friends that we grew up with, that we went to church with, who live in 3 different cities with their families. And just last year, all 3 of their homes in Nashville, Chattanooga, and Cookeville were destroyed by tornadoes. Just last year is the craziest thing. But in the blink of an eye, almost all of their material possessions were blown away. Gone with the wind, literally. Our stuff can be destroyed. It can deteriorate, as Jesus makes clear here. Those fine clothes you got in your closet, the moths will eat those. They had more of a problem with that in Jesus' day than we do today, but we did up until just a few generations ago. That's why you'd buy mothballs and put them in the closet to keep those moths from eating your clothes. Jesus says those fine metals will corrode. your stuff will deteriorate. And whatever's not destroyed, whatever doesn't deteriorate, the thieves can break in and steal. Jesus might have well here have said, dig in, because a lot of the homes in this day and age, in this culture, were built with mud bricks. So you just, if you were a thief, needed some good tools to break through the wall to steal. But today, thieves can break through a window, can bust down a door, and clean us out. Our stuff is not safe. No matter how many alarm systems that we have, somebody can take it from us. So that's why, Jesus says, that's why we don't view our stuff as our greatest treasure. That's why it's not more important to us than spiritual blessings, because it can be destroyed, because it will deteriorate, because it can be taken from us. Instead, Jesus says, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Treasures in heaven. So let me ask you again, what do you treasure most? What do you treasure most? And I think we would all want to say, because hey, it's 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning and we're sitting in church, we've gathered together to worship God and enjoy fellowship with the saints. I think we'd all want to say, not my stuff. I don't treasure my stuff most of all. No, heaven holds all to me, as we just sang. That's what I'm all about. Heaven is most important to me. That's my most important treasure, but not so fast. And I'm speaking to myself as much as I am to you, not so fast. Because it's possible that that answer, which I believe would be all our answer, is not backed up by our lifestyle. I read about a minister who was counseling a young man who had recently been married and was having some serious problems in his marriage. He was also a recent convert. This preacher had baptized this young man, and he was talking to him about his marriage, and he said, how important is your marriage? And he said, very important. He said, what would you do to save your marriage? He said, I would do anything. I would stop at nothing to save my marriage. And so he said, well, tell me a little about your life. And he said, well, business is booming, and I stay pretty busy with work, and I enjoy a lot of hobbies. I enjoy playing sports with my friends, and indeed, this young man was a very good athlete, had even played at college. And as they spoke, the minister came to understand that he was spending a lot of time at work or having fun playing sports with his friends, and not a lot of time actually investing in his marriage. And so the minister finally said to him, listen, you may say that you want to save your marriage, but you're not putting in the work. You're not making an investment. Your treasures are someplace else. So we may say that heavenly treasure to us is most important, that heaven holds all to me, but that may not be backed up in the way that we are actually living. So, to ensure that what we say is our treasure is actually our treasure, I think some hard questions are in order. I think we need to ask ourselves some kind of difficult questions. So are you willing to go there with me? I'm going to go there myself. I'm going to try to. Are you willing to ask these of yourself? Let's ask them together. Here's the first one. How do I occupy my time? How do I occupy my time? Let me look at my schedule and my calendar and see what all's on there. Am I occupying my time serving the Lord? Or am I using what's on the calendar to serve the Lord? Am I taking the gospel to all the places where I go? Or am I using my time to care for my stuff? Because this is the catch-22 when you got a lot of stuff. It's not just about buying the stuff. It's about maintaining the stuff. It's about cleaning the stuff. It's about upgrading the stuff. The more you have to take care of. The more that eats up our time, and the less time that we have for those things that are most important, actually serving the Lord. And a lot of times, our stuff becomes not good enough for us. We got to upgrade. We got to get the next best thing. So how do I occupy my time? That's a probing question that we all should be willing to ask ourselves. Here's another one. How do I spend my money? I need to look at my credit card accounts. I need to look at my bank account go down the check registry, for those of you who still keep one of those, and look at all of my transactions and look at actually what I'm spending my money on. Am I trying to advance God's kingdom in how I am spending my resources, or am I just simply amassing more things that will not last, that will not stand the test of time? We are in a battle. We talked about a battle last week, but I'd like to use that word again because there are entire industries in our country that are making us into consumers. And we are daily inundated with advertisements, not just on TV anymore, but on social media, on the internet. And you have Googled something, and then all of a sudden you get on Facebook, and there's an ad for what you searched for. And some of you have even experienced this phenomenon where you say something, you're talking about something that you want, and you get on there, and there's an ad for it. Listen, we are being targeted, and it's amazing how you can see an ad for something and think, oh, I need that. And sometimes we see ads for something we did not even know existed 5 seconds before, and now we're convinced we can't do without it. Some of us need to add 4 simple words to our vocabulary as we traverse this landscape where, we're just being constantly pressured to buy more and more. The 4 words are this: I don't need that. I don't need that. We got to be careful with our language. We use this language, I need. No. I want. I'd like to have. Be nice to have. But I don't need that. How am I spending my money? Another question. What directs my thoughts? What's going on up here? What is the landscape of my mind and my thinking? Am I consumed with thoughts about how to advance God's kingdom, about how to spread the gospel, about how to do good and bless my neighbors, godly concerns? Or am I consumed with worldly cares? These questions and others you could probably think of. Another one would be, what excites me? What really gets my blood pumping? Is it serving in the kingdom of God, or is it watching my favorite team play ball? Or is it planning my next vacation? Or is it having some other fun out there? Or is it serving the Lord and seeing His ways go forth throughout the world? What excites me? These questions and more. Honestly considering these reveals a more accurate answer to what do I treasure most? And Jesus makes a compelling case. He makes a compelling case for treasuring heavenly things, because unlike earthly treasures, and we really need to get this in our brains and lock it in. Unlike earthly treasures, heavenly treasure cannot be destroyed. Heavenly treasure cannot be destroyed, and it doesn't wear out, and it will never be taken. That's what Jesus says in verse 20. The second part of verse 20 says, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. Heavenly treasure is imperishable. It is permanent. It is lasting, unlike every material thing that we enjoy in our lives. And what exactly are these treasures? What is heavenly treasure? It might be a good idea to answer that question specifically. What are we talking about? Well, we're not talking about gold and jewels, this language that the Bible often uses metaphorically to describe the place where we are going, to let us know that it is perfect in every way. It is beyond our imagination, and it exceeds the ability of language to capture it. That's not what we're talking about. Let me quote from a commentator here. He says, these are heavenly treasures. The things which are the results of the divine approval and which will be lavished upon the disciples in the kingdom to come. He says, the treasures of the new heaven and new earth are wonderful beyond our wildest expectation. Love undiluted, a way of life utterly sinless, integrity untarnished, work and responsibility without fatigue, deep emotions without tears, worship without restraint or disharmony or sham, and best of all, the presence of God in an unqualified, unrestricted, personal way. And he says, such treasures cannot be assailed by corrosion or theft. Heavenly treasure are all the blessings that are afforded to us by God's grace through our faith in Jesus Christ. What's the line in the song that we just sang? Joy without measure, that will be my treasure. And love without measure, and forgiveness without measure, and peace without measure. And when we read in Revelation chapter 21 about the new heaven and earth, it is a place where there is no more mourning, no more pain, no more sickness, because there's no more death. Therefore, there's no more crying. God will wipe every tear away from our eyes. That's my treasure. I said at the family retreat, I have been reminded as I've gotten older, just really over the last few months, that so many of you, so many people are walking around grieving losses. You know, when I was a kid, I thought that grief sort of went away after a week or two of losing somebody that you love. But I've been reminded over the last several months that when you lose somebody you love, it takes much longer than that. It takes months, it takes years, and some of you are carrying around that sadness and that heaviness with you. And I'm sorry, the rest of us, we've forgotten about that. We've kind of moved on. We've neglected you. We shouldn't. We should remember your pain. We should mourn with you who are mourning. We should weep with those of you who are weeping. But we also look ahead to a place, the new heaven and earth, after the old one passes away, where there is no more mourning because there is no more death and there is no more pain. And God Himself will take His hand and will wipe away every tear from our eyes. That's my treasure. Is it yours? Heaven should hold all for us. That kind of thing doesn't pass away. It doesn't deteriorate. It cannot be destroyed. It won't be taken. That's where the treasure's at, the true treasure. Those are the heavenly treasures that Jesus is talking about here. And some of these treasures, you know, we enjoy partially here. As we comfort those who mourn, as we help to wipe tears away from one another's eyes, we provide a preview of the new heaven and earth that's on its way. We get a little down payment of the joy and the peace and the love that's coming. Even as we await the fullness of the splendor in the life to come, we look forward to it. It's like an inheritance that is paid out a little at a time and then in the life to come all at once. And we look ahead to when we can experience the treasure in its fullness. And listen, Jesus reveals something else that's really important here regarding what we treasure most in verse 21 of chapter 6. And we've kind of been nibbling around the edges of it, but here we go. Let's talk about it. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be. Whatever you treasure, that's where your heart's going to be. So Jesus says, choose what you treasure wisely, because this is what this means. Whatever you treasure, that's what governs your life. That's what directs your steps. Whatever you fix your mind on, you will be drawn in that direction. And it will occupy, as we mentioned earlier, your time, your money, your thoughts, because whatever you treasure, that is what has your heart. I love how the Message paraphrases this verse. It says, the place your treasure is, that's the place you will most want to be and end up being. That's where your heart is. So Jesus tells us that we must make a choice as to what we will treasure most. We've got to make a choice. It can't be both, because a little bit later in verse 24 he says, no one can serve two masters. You cannot, Jesus says, serve both God and money. You got to pick one. You cannot treasure both. You got to pick what is your greatest treasure. And when you weigh these out, when you really weigh these out, the choice could not be clearer. I mean, let's just think about eternity in terms of time. Let's think about it in terms of time. How important will your stuff be in 50 trillion years? How important? How important will that car be, that truck, that camper, that boat, that house? And mind you, if I was preaching this sermon in Africa or in Peru or in Mexico where we've taken trips, I would not have said any of those things because the people to whom I'd be preaching would not have owned any of those things. This is the very first world sermon. I wouldn't have used those examples. And the fact that I'm using those examples with all of us shows us that we have a problem with this, unlike anybody who's ever lived on planet Earth. We have a problem with treasuring earthly things. So let me ask you again, how important will your stuff be in 50 trillion years or in 50 trillion millennia? However big of a number you want to get, how important will it be? The answer, you already know, not important at all. It will all be gone. It will not exist. You brought nothing into this world. You cannot take anything out. Not important in the least. How important will heavenly treasure be? The heavenly treasure that you are storing up at the present time as you lead a faithful life, how important will that be in 50 trillion years? Of the utmost importance. Because that stuff isn't going anywhere. You will still be enjoying that heavenly reward in that amount of time and in another 50 trillion and in another 50 trillion after that. After you have long since forgotten what it is that's most important to you and how you spend your time taking care of it and the money you spend buying more, even more stuff. It's not going to be important. So it is a poor bargain. It is a pitifully poor bargain to trade the eternal for the temporal. It's an even worse bargain than when Esau traded his birthright for a bowl of soup. That was a bad bargain. This is even worse. So the time for choosing is now. We must choose between, let me put it this way, what is worthless that we cannot keep. That's our material stuff. What is worthless that we cannot keep, we got to choose between it and what is priceless that we cannot lose. And put like that, the choice could not be clearer. So what is it that you treasure most? You know, when your treasure is in heaven, when that's what's most important to you, then you live in ways that are, well, they're inexplicable, they're unexplainable to your neighbors, and yet they're appealing to your neighbors when you live in this way, when heavenly treasure is most important. Because you remain calm when the stock market takes a nosedive. You remain calm because that's not where it's at. I mean, you remain calm when a natural disaster occurs and you lose all your stuff because that's not what you treasure most. And you don't obsess over the latest gadget or gizmo or toy. You don't have to have it because that's not what's most important to you. You don't need it. You know you don't need it. And you're exceptionally generous. I mean, you go above and beyond. You go the second mile in giving to those in need around you. Now, I've got a long way to go. But that's the kind of person that I want to be. I want to be somebody like that. And I can only be somebody like that when I am laying up for myself treasures not on this earth, but in heaven. I want to be characterized in this way. I want to close with 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 17 through 19, where the Apostle Paul echoes a lot of what we've said this morning, a lot of what Jesus had to say in the Sermon on the Mount. Let's hear him out, and then the lesson will be yours. Paul says, as for the rich in this present age, and he's talking to us, folks. He is talking to us. We are more wealthy than those to whom he spoke in the first century. So we are the rich. So we are charged by Paul not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good. They are to be rich in good works, to be generous and ready to share, open-handed. Thus, in doing this is what happens. Thus, storing up treasure for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life. We're storing up treasures that we will enjoy in the future, our reward, our heavenly inheritance, heavenly treasure. Listen, Jesus treasures you. He does. He would not have gone to the cross otherwise. He died on the cross to make me, a wretch, his treasure. And he did the same for you. He treasures you. You are close to his heart. Will you treasure him? Will you make him your ultimate treasure? Jesus and his ways. Will you decide that I'm no longer laying up for myself treasures on the earth, but treasures in heaven? Do you want to treasure him above all? You can come, you can confess his name, repent of your sins, be baptized so that those sins are washed away, come up a new creature. If you feel like just your focus is off and you've been fixated on the wrong things and you've been treasuring earthly things more than heavenly things, and you can come and we'll pray for you. And I tell you what, we'll relate to you. And we won't just be praying for you, we'll be praying for us too, because we're all in this boat together. And we all struggle with this in a similar way. So if you need to become a Christian today, if you need prayers for any reason, why don't you come right now as we stand and sing? But